Good afternoon. I'm Brian Lackey, and today we will be taking a look at some of the significance of the Freedom Trail and specifically focusing on the importance of the Boston Massacre and the propaganda that drove the war. History of Boston plays a critical role in colonial America, much like Philadelphia and the First Continental Congress, or the Battle of Trenton, where for the first time the Patriots were successful on the battlefield. It is deeply rooted in the foundation of America in regards to the American Revolution. It is as significant as anywhere within the continental United States. The 2.5-mile Freedom Trail that stretches through the heart of Boston is full of public history, museums, and features key points of high treason and revolutionary actions that are directly tied to America as we know it today. Now, to establish a period-correct perspective of Boston in 1768, you have to imagine an overcrowded city of 16,000 Bostonians intermixed with loyalists, revolutionaries, and of course your middle-of-the-ground idealists playing both sides. The social environment was very volatile and provided very conflicting ideas of the future. After months of what was considered unfair practices by the king, tempers began to rise, and in an attempt to maintain order and control, the British would send 2,000 soldiers to occupy Boston. Their duties would be very routine and range from guard duty to civil control as needed. However, this occupation would anger the people of Boston for several reasons, but two were specifically directed toward the British soldiers. It is well known most British soldiers were underpaid and between their official duties would seek employment within the city. This would take away vital jobs from the people of Boston and create an underlying animosity toward the soldiers. Secondly, the British men would also court and interact with American women, which was not only considered inappropriate, it impacted the number of eligible women within the city. These conditions would go on for some time and build a powder keg of a situation which takes us to the night of March 5th, 1770. The Boston Massacre would be the flame that set an entire revolution into action. Coincidentally, it would not be started on the battlefield or with senior politicians, but with two very insignificant men on the corner of King Street. While on guard duty in front of the Customs House, Private White would be involved in an altercation with a local man named Edward Garrett. Garrett, after a night of drinking in the local pub, was happily expressing his dislike of British soldiers' presence in Boston. After several words, the argument culminated with Private White striking Garrett with the butt of his musket. Disturbance quickly drew a large crowd, and White felt he was in danger, called the primary guards out, and was quickly supported by 7 additional soldiers to include 1 officer. As the crowd grew, so did emotions, and at one point a club was thrown at the soldiers, resulting in the firing of their muskets. After the smoke settled, 5 Bostonians lay dead. Following this incident, a vigorous propaganda effort would take place, starting with the famous print from Paul Revere. Up to this point, while there were many unhappy Bostonians, there was still a large group of loyalists who were not committed completely to cutting their British ties. Propaganda effort would ultimately sway the general population and gain the support of the war. This effort would be a critical point in the war gaining momentum and carrying the nation through. Now, looking more in depth at the Boston Massacre, we can highlight the inaccurate points that Paul Revere strategically misrepresented with his print. In his print, it shows 7 soldiers, muskets raised in a straight line resembling a firing squad with the officer in the rear. Smoke all around and multiple unarmed bodies on the ground, evoking emotions that the Americans were the victims. In reality, the soldiers had formed a half-moon defense with the wall to their back and an officer in the front trying to please the crowd. It was nighttime with an estimated 200 to 300 people in the crowd, most of which left the nearby pub still full of ale. Throughout the ordeal, the crowd was screaming for the soldiers to fire, challenging them in every verbal way possible. The club was thrown, striking a soldier in the head, and at which point they felt they had no choice but to fire onto the aggressors. Soldiers involved would be charged with murder, defended by John Adams, and all but 2 would have all the charges dismissed. From a British standpoint, It was an unfortunate event, but not a massacre. But it played a vital role in uniting America. Prior to this event, there was not a unified idea of the people, and Revere's misleading print created a purpose and direction that would unite America.